Καθίστε σας παρακαλώ. Αν μπορέσετε να κλείσετε τα τηλέφωνα σας ή να τα βάλετε στο silent. Please put your phones on silent. First and foremost, we'd like to thank you all for being here. Πρώτο και κύριο, καλώς ορίσατε. Θα είναι πολύ ωραίο panel discussion σήμερα. Θα κάνουμε μερικά breaks. Να σας δώσουμε ευκαιρία να μιλήσετε, να κάνετε networking, give you all a chance to network, have some refreshments, and we have a cocktail party from 5:30 to 7 to thank you all for coming. We're on a kind of a tight schedule because of the speakers, so in order to kick everything off, we always have our Supreme President, none other than Savas Tsivikos, to welcome you and start the introducing the panels. Savas?
Σας χαιρετώ. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming here today. It is an opportunity to communicate and hear words of wisdom from people, experts in their respective fields. A big thank you to the presenters of today's panel discussions, the participants, and I would like to welcome especially our good friend, the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Diaspora, Philip Fortomas. Thank you for being with us today. The first panel discussion has to do with energy, which is very, very important these days, especially in our area, in the Eastern Mediterranean. With the latest developments, there are opportunities and also there are conflicts as well. It is a time for Greece and Cyprus, along with Israel and Egypt, to coordinate their activities for the national interests of the respective countries. We are here as an organization to promote and advance Hellenism in the respective countries where we live in, but especially in the United States. Our main goal, as I said, is to defend and advance Hellenism, to promote education, philanthropy, and civic responsibility and civic engagement. I think as an organization we have come a long way. We have a huge history of 103 years. This organization was founded in Atlanta, Georgia in 1922, when the young immigrants of Greek origin were persecuted, discriminated against, marginalized, and a few wise men decided to come together and fight back. Not to cry, but to fight back and help the young community assimilate in the American society. And I have to tell you, a century later, they have done a wonderful job. Our community in the United States is the envy of every other community. Really. And I don't say it because we are Greeks, but because it's the reality. So, but there is a lot more to be done. We live at critical times with geopolitical changes on a daily basis. And again, every time there is a change, there is an opportunity. The question is, are we ready? Are the governments of Greece and Cyprus ready to take advantage of these developments? In my opinion, they are very positive developments where they have Greece and Cyprus in the center of the equation. So we will hear from the presenters today on these topics, and we will have an opportunity, you will have an opportunity to understand what is happening, and many times what's happening behind the scenes. As you know, we have a new government in the United States, there is a new sheriff in town, and a lot of things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. And again, that is going to test a lot of relationships. But at the end of the day, as President Trump says, America first, Greece should say Greece first, Cyprus should say Cyprus first. Nothing wrong with that. So there is a new beginning. I believe the relationships between the United States, Greece and Cyprus is at all-time high. And there is a lot of room for better cooperation and better opportunities. With that, I would like to thank you for being here, especially the participants in today's panel discussions. Thank you. And now I will ask and thank again the moderator of the first panel, Mr. Konstantinos Eleftheriadis. Thank you, Konstantinos, for taking this task.
Also, we have a speaker on this panel, Rita Galli. Please join us. And while she's making her way to the stage, I want to recognize Margaret Tritsas, our Grand President of the Daughters of Penelope, Manoli Konstans, President of Canada, Elena Saviolakis, Executive Director of the Daughters, and Basil Mercedes, Executive Director of the AHEPA. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. You can hear me now? Yep. Yes, it's okay. Thank you all, and welcome to our panel, where we are going to discuss regarding the theme is Greece as the energy center for geopolitical stability. I think that our country has done a lot of steps over the last years in order to become a point of reference regarding stability in the region and significant investments in terms of energy. So today we are going to focus on the energy landscape and the geopolitical issues that have to do with Greece, with the wider region and Southeast Europe, and also the Mediterranean Sea. We have together with us, of course, the Supreme President of AHEPA, Ms. Rita Galli, the CEO of DESFA. And we will also have in a while Mr. Theodoros Tsakiris, Professor Theodoros Tsakiris, who is the Professor of Energy Policy and Geopolitics in the University of Nicosia and the Coordinator of the International Policy for Energy in the Ministry of Energy. He will join through Zoom in a while. So, Ms. Galli, I know that you have a very busy schedule today. You just came back from a business trip, so I know that you have to leave early. So I will start with you. And I know that DESFA has done a significant part in terms of investments when it comes to Greece, and it plays a pivotal role for Greece, not only for Greece, but also for the wider region. Now that we have the elections, we have the new president, President Trump, how do you think that this is going to impact the business of DESFA in the region?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting me, and I'm very glad to be part of this event. First of all, for those very briefly who don't know who is DESFA, DESFA is a Greek company which is the, let's say, the gas transmission system operator. So it's a company which owns and operates all the high-pressure natural gas pipelines, as well as the regasification terminal of Revitusa, which is the large import point for liquefied natural gas in the country. And we are also co-shareholder in the new regasification terminal of Alexandroupolis. Coming to, let's say, of course, gas has always been at the center of many geopolitical, let's say, discussions, because mainly gas is not a resource that Europe owns, and therefore there is a strong dependence from imported sources of gas. We all know what has been happening since 2022 with the Ukrainian crisis, and even more recently this December with the suspension of the transit of natural gas through Ukraine. And therefore the topic of creating a system of infrastructure which allows a strong ability to diversify supply sources and guarantee the availability and the diversification of the sources has been a long-term priority. Greece has done a lot, and in this sense, for its own, let's say, security of supply in terms of diversification of routes, but also for opening up new routes for Southeast Europe in general. Many progresses have been made by Greece in the last few years. Let me just give you a few, very briefly, an indication. Let's say Greece has started with the diversification of supply sources when more than 20 years ago, when the Revitusa terminal has been built. But coming much more recently, a lot of significant steps have been made in the last very few years. 2018, Revitusa has been expanded, so increasing significantly the capacity to import LNG. 2020, the TAP pipeline has been built, crossing Greece and enabling Greece to receive pipe gas also from Azerbaijan. In 2022, the interconnector between Greece and Bulgaria at the end of 2022 has been put in operation. Last year, in 2024, the new Alexandroupolis terminal, which is a new import terminal, has been connected to the system. And in the course of 2025, we will complete, as DESFA, most of the internal network investment that enable the country to import and re-export more than 8 billion cubic meter per year, which, to give you an idea, is more than the domestic consumption of Greece. So the infrastructure of Greece can receive gas that abundantly cover the demand of the country and can also export LNG toward Bulgaria, and we are also building a new pipeline to North Macedonia. And from Bulgaria, these sources of gas can travel up to Romania, and then Moldova, Ukraine, and on the other side, Hungary and Slovak. Of course, this route is a long route for new sources of natural gas, and in particular liquefied natural gas, and therefore there has been a big effort of coordination among all those countries and amongst all those gas transmission system operator, an effort that we have called this initiative the Vertical Corridor. The idea is really to make it possible for countries which are isolated from the sea to be able to receive also new LNG sources. So in this respect, let's say Greece, that before 2022 was a country where fundamentally we were receiving gas from the north, from Russia, through first Bulgaria and then Black Sea, Turkey and Bulgaria. Already in the course of the crisis, in the matter of a few days, Bulgaria started receiving gas only through Greece. Then they also activated Turkey. But you can see, let's say, how having built over time in Greece this very resilient and diversified infrastructure has created a lot of potential for securing the domestic market and also playing a role for our neighbors. And we tested again this in this year, because just after the transit suspension in Ukraine, TAP, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, had a couple of weeks of extraordinary maintenance, and Greece didn't suffer any problem. More recently, Alexandroupolis is having some extraordinary maintenance, and we are absolutely coping with a very high gas demand. So it means that even when we lose one entry point, we have sufficient capacity to cover all our needs. And to reinforce this Mediterranean partnership and role of Greece as really an entry door and a corridor for the Balkans, also, and since I understand we have also Cypriot, let's say, colleagues here, as I mentioned, I've been just coming back from an event in Egypt, where also as a Greek company, we have a very strong cooperation with the Egyptian company. And there's been the announcement of the agreement between Cyprus and Egypt to connect the production field of Kronos in Cyprus to Egypt, so that this gas produced in Cyprus can be transformed in liquefied gas using the liquefaction terminal of Egypt, which are already there, in the Damietta terminal in particular. And this gas once it is loaded on the LNG ship, can again arrive in Greece and travel up north. So the cooperation in the region is going to enable some gas of Cyprus that was not sufficient in terms of size to be fully economically exploited with a new infrastructure that was to be built in Cyprus. By joining forces, by using to the best existing infrastructure, and through the cooperation between Cyprus and Egypt, and then in the future, hopefully also Greece, but we have already received LNG from Egypt in the past, there is going to be the possibility really of unlocking potential of East Mediterranean resources. And finally, because I've been elaborating a bit when you say about the changes in the United States administration, what I can see from our perspective is that there is going to be a very strong continuity with relation to the role of the United States as a new supplier of liquefied natural gas, probably even more than in the past. And so all the efforts that Greek companies have been doing in the last years to expand the capacity to receive the US LNG and to export also toward the neighboring countries will continue to be exploited, and probably even more. For instance, later in 2025, from October, a US LNG producer, Venture Global, will start delivering on a continuous basis LNG to the Alexandroupolis terminal to be exported. In December, for the first time, an US LNG cargo has been regasified in Revitusa for an Ukrainian buyer. So we see this concept of the vertical corridor being transforming into a reality, and we see that this is fully aligned with the declared intention of the US administration to supply more LNG to Europe. Sorry, but I had to take it a little bit from far away.
No, it's okay.
Because I don't know how much everybody knows about who we are. And
I think it was very nice to hear all these things about all the projects that they are running all they are about to run in the region. I have to ask you now about the energy transition, because we have discussed a lot about natural gas being the fuel for energy transition. Then we had a significant focus on solar and wind, and it was, let's say, the natural gas stayed a bit outside. Now we have turned the page, and I think that from the US, the message that is coming is a bit different. What do you think about the energy transition? Are we moving away from the target? Do we continue towards that direction?
Well, I hope so, in the sense that no matter what, I mean, we really have to think about how to decarbonize our energy sector. Let me say that probably, and we have been experiencing this, unfortunately, European Union in particular has taken sometimes a very extreme position with respect not to the final target, but to the speed of decarbonization that was too fast to be economically and technically viable. Let me say, first of all, that as a gas infrastructure company, we do not see the growth of renewable as a threat, because we really explore day by day how gas is partnering with the renewables. Why? First of all, because the way toward decarbonization is a way that implies a lot of electrification of the end uses. So we will see, and we are already seeing, an increase of electricity consumption. We consume electricity when we need it, not when we have sun or wind. And the battery industry is still something very nascent and not yet really something that can be deployed at scale, and in particular not something that can cover 10 days of cold or 1 month in July without wind. So for this, we need to have both renewable and natural gas production. And the fact that natural gas is critical to have more renewable in the system is something that also in Europe has become to be very, very widely recognized. Of course, with the goal progressively to use decarbonized gases, but today with natural gas. And in Greece, let me say, last year, in the last 12 months, the natural gas consumption has increased of 30%, which is quite unique in Europe, mainly for the power generation. And again, because with a good mix of gas and renewables, the electricity produced in Greece, I know that it's difficult to understand, but it's cheaper than the electricity produced in other countries. And from the last year, for the first year, Greece has been a net exporter of electricity also to Italy, to Bulgaria, to North Macedonia and Albania. And this is because gas and power have been working together. Having said that, let's say, I do expect, in any case, a more pragmatic approach that we've been advocating a lot with respect to the path of decarbonization. But I do hope that we keep the target straight. We need to decarbonize our energy system. We have the tools, we have the technologies. Natural gas today is the most, let's say, clean among the fossil fuels. It's very flexible, can be decarbonized in the future, moving to hydrogen, which will take time. And gas technologies can offer a lot of solutions for decarbonization, including technologies like carbon capture and sequestration. So when we need to use fossil fuels, the problem is not the fuel, the problem is the CO2 or methane emission as well. So if we can use the fossil fuel and capture the CO2, we are always going in the right direction. And the technology of CO2 capturing and the possibility of storing the CO2 in the gas fields and the oil fields, which are depleted, is a technology that the United States has been using since many, many years to increase the production of gas and oil by injecting the CO2 in the depleted fields. And now in Europe it's becoming a technology which is recognized as one of the building blocks of the decarbonization. So I think that the market adjusts. The role of the policy is to give the direction, not to give the technical solution. Let's say, the market also knows, I think all the energy players know that the direction is set. How fast is a matter of guaranteeing reliability, affordability, but we cannot afford to do otherwise. So I think that slowly and constantly, without accelerating and then coming back, because otherwise, if you are a pendulum, we never move. So personally, I think we keep calm and carry on slowly, but without giving up the targets.
So we keep the direction, but we have a more realistic approach in order to be efficient for all market participants. But you said that the demand for natural gas has increased, and I think that this is obvious from the fact also that the energy storage in Europe, they are at close to the lowest levels for the last 5 years. How do you think the gas prices will go after this, let's say, shortage?
Well, we are not in a shortage, let's say. We are in a normal situation for a normal winter. So before, the last 2 winters have been very warm, but before the crisis, every year in February, March, the level of the storages in Europe were at this level or even lower. There are historical curves that indicate the level of... The challenge this year, so, is not the absolute level of storages, which is absolutely physiological, is that this year is the first time that we needed to replace so much gas without Russian pipe gas. Because in the 2 years after the crisis, the winters were warm and the storages in the spring were already quite a very high level, much higher than now. This year is a normal year, a bit colder possibly, and so a lot of LNG will need to be purchased during the summer months. During the summer months means that there will be competition between Europe and Asia. Also Asia needs energy during the summer. And so when there is competition and the production capacity of the world is not yet, is increasing, because many new liquefaction terminals, in particular the United States, are under development, but is not yet there. And so I expect that this summer period we may have a bit of tension on the prices. The gas is there, the LNG is there. Other countries like India and China, if the price is getting a bit high, they switch to other fuels, more polluting. So it's never a good thing overall, but the gas will arrive, the LNG will arrive in Europe. We will have to pay a premium to secure the gas. But progressively, and with the exception of, Greece probably, but the demand in Europe has remained below 2021 levels. And so, let's say, and new LNG terminals are coming in operation. So in a matter of a couple of years, the market will be well balanced. Someone even says that there will be an excess of production. We need to navigate a bit through this couple of years ahead in front of us, but nothing to compare with the crisis of 22.
Great. I know that you have to leave, so a very small question, if we have 1 or 2 minutes. Regarding the projects that we have running in the wider area. We have many projects that have to do with gas, FSRUs, pipelines, thermal units. So all these projects, they have been tackled, they have been facing issues, both for funding and also for viability, because of prices, etc. Do you think that these projects will become viable now?
With respect to, let's say, gas infrastructure in Greece, well, we are investing a total of 1.3 billion without problem of finding funds, and we even received loans under the recovery fund, not grants, but loans. It's more difficult to get financing for gas infrastructures, but it's still feasible. Power plants are being done in Greece a lot. We have a new power plant in Komotini, another one, a new coming in Alexandroupolis. PPC has announced that they will replace the lignite power plant in Ptolemaida with a gas-fired power plant. So for the production of electricity with gas, people is finding money. Of course, the more you get far from your domestic market and you need to invest for transit, the more it becomes difficult, because you need someone in the receiving country which is ready to take a long-term commitment to buy the capacity. So, let's say, developments, when in particular you get farther away, there are still bottlenecks in Central Europe that are struggling to be removed. We, together with our partner TSO, are preparing a white paper for the Commission to try to push forward for some targeted financial support for those countries that are struggling more to invest to guarantee transit. In particular, Romania, there's limitation about what they can do because they cannot pay with their consumer investment for transit. And there is a space in Greece for another import terminal, possibly, if there is not demand outside Greece. Of course, we need players to take a commitment. We had, for the first time, a US producer taking a commitment. The more US producers are willing to take commitments, and let me say in the past, Qatari still today, Russian, of course, they all were taking long-term commitments, so US should play more or less with the same rules, and this will secure that there will be capacity.
Well, what is the plan? What is the plan of developing and extracting the great reserves that the country has, now that the US refocused the attention on those? It seems that we're not moving fast enough in developing what we have.
Well, let's say maybe the next panelist will be better placed than me to comment, because he works in the Ministry of Energy. I take care more about, our company take care more about the transporting the gas. So yes, we would love to see an acceleration of exploration and production in Greece, because that will mean that we have also domestic reserves. But as a company which builds the infrastructure, we are not involved and we are not even allowed to invest in exploration and production under the European legislation. So I think Mr. Tsakiris is better placed than me to elaborate.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and your time today. We really appreciate it. And do we have Mr. Tsakiris? He's online. Thank you, Ms. Galli.
Hi.
Hello,
Hello?
Mr. Tsakiris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me back? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm at your disposal.
Thank you for being here with us, even virtually, Mr. Tsakiris. We had a discussion now with Ms. Galli, and I think we touched a couple of points regarding gas, regarding the infrastructure, regarding the vertical corridor. I know that you have extensive knowledge regarding geopolitics in the region, and we would like all of us to hear your views regarding those issues. But let me start, first of all, with a simple question. I did pretty much the same question to Ms. Galli. Now that we have a change in the American presidency, now that you have the election of President Trump, what do you think are the impacts that we will see in the energy sector, in the region, including Greece? And do you think that we will see these in the short term or in the longer term?
What Trump is doing is pivoting back to what he considers to be the core energy comparative advantage of the United States, which is, of course, its own hydrocarbon reserves. He's not necessarily, as he's trying to be described by his critics, as doesn't have a polemical understanding regarding of renewable energy, at least, but he wants to be able to do that in a more, I think, transitional fashion, a more transitional way. For example, when one of the most important issues currently over the potential agreement for a ceasefire, or even hopefully, although much more difficult, a general peace agreement in Ukraine is a plan for the U.S. to be able to develop Ukraine's vast rare earth and other cobalt and lithium mineral deposits. If Trump was not interested in the energy transition, he would not have been pushing for this. And these are metals which are necessary. They are the core mineral underpinnings of the global energy transition. So Trump would not be interested in. He would have, if he was only an oil and gas fanatic, as people are trying to some of his critics try to describe him. He would pay no mind. He would pay no attention to this. This is a pivoting, a refocusing. The biggest difference between the Trump and the Biden strategies with regards to natural gas is that, unfortunately for him, Biden introduced a major, with no good reasoning, a ban on future LNG export terminals and their permitting in the United States. That's the biggest point of divergence. And I think we're going to see, even when you come to the Inflation Reductions Act, that you're going to see a lot of it being kept by the Republican presidency and the Republican Congress, partly because 80% of the money is already going to Republican districts in this regard. His pivot will affect Europe, and it is already starting to affect Europe in the sense that there is a growing understanding, especially after the increasing costs of the Russian-Ukrainian war. I remind you, Europe directly and indirectly paid a cost of more than 1 trillion euros as a result of the Russian-Ukrainian energy crisis and the impact of the the energy impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war within 2022 and 2023. This is considerable costs. And these considerable costs have driven through the argument to many specific audiences that the energy transition is, of course, a climate imperative, which needs to be addressed. But this needs to be done in a more detailed and a more balanced fashion that would also put emphasis on the other two very important components of an energy strategy, which until 2019 were balanced even within the European context. Economic competitiveness and security of supply, especially when it comes to countries that have almost zero domestic production of hydrocarbons in Europe. There is a growing understanding in Europe that even some parts of the digitization process of the economy, with the most important areas of potential increasing demand, such as data centers and artificial intelligence, are very energy intensive. And this energy intensity cannot come from intermittent renewables, but they have to come from a combination of baseload electricity of very high efficiency, which could be a combination of nuclear and gas. And this is not something which it is already self-evident in the US. It has happened in the US. It has been happening in the US way before the US election, led by companies the likes of Amazon, the likes of Microsoft, the likes of any major tech giant company, which are entering the electricity business both as investors or investors and off-takers, but as well as generators, independent generators of electricity, either in gas or in nuclear, so that they would be able to secure this steady load of high efficiency, low risk 24 hours electricity supply, without which data centers and AI cannot operate, especially if you put it in the context of an increasing competition with China. Germany, the incoming German Chancellor, Mr. Merz, has made comments to that effect already with regards to a shift in German strategy. Of course, it doesn't mean that the European energy deal is over, and it shouldn't mean that the European energy deal is over, just not to be misunderstood. The idea is that this has to be refocused, and this has to be revamped within a new context of understanding that the energy transition is a generational process. That's not going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years. It's not it's not during the life of a government or an administration, but to the life of a generation or generations in plural, just because of the incumbent importance of hydrocarbons and the need of secure electricity, and the fact that we don't yet have the technological innovation that would make possible an even faster transition along the train of the energy transition. So, natural gas has been characterized as a bridge fuel. We're now understanding that this bridge is much larger, and we're going to need the fuel for much longer compared to what was the understanding in Europe and throughout the world, especially for LNG, until the recent days, until a few years ago. And I think that the Russian-Ukrainian war and Trump's repivoting are driving these arguments through. They are resonating not only in government, but also in business, which will also have the higher participation in terms of investment, and in terms also of job creation for those sectors of the European economy that is in the midst of a very major competitive crisis. Read the Draghi report in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Tsakiris. May I ask regarding Greece, what do you think? Do you think that this is going to have an impact on the relationship between the US and Greece? And do we need to change the energy policy that we have as a country?
No, I think if there's an impact, it's going to be a positive one. And Greece, especially after 2022, has already repivoted in this regard. The Prime Minister has understood and has publicly highlighted the importance of using gas as a transitional fuel, without, of course, thinking that this transition is a matter of a few years, and understanding the concept and the costs of the energy transition. And he has been lobbying other Europeans for rationalization of that strategy and the phases of that strategy and the speed of that strategy. And we're talking about the speed, the acceleration, and how you can do that in the most cost-effective and secure way, not the final end goal, just to be clarified, to be clear. And I think that there are areas of a lot of similarities with the United States repivoting in this regard. Greece has already been trying to do that since 2022 by prioritizing 6 areas of potential interest for exploration and production of hydrocarbons in Greece, and we have added a 7th region following the publication of Chevron's interest for a significant area to the south of the Peloponnese in this regard. And throughout 2022 and 2023, we've shot the biggest amount of seismic ever shot in Greek history in many areas across the Ionian Sea and to the south of the Peloponnese and the west and southwest of Crete. so that the companies which have the rights of exploration, and exploration is about to enter its should enter over the next couple of years its most active fashion, which is the exploratory drilling itself. In 2026 and 2027, we expect a series of drills, exploratory drilling, to take place in the Ionian Sea and southwest of Crete. And of course, depending on the potential discovery of these reserves, it's not completely unrealistic to say that under conditions, Greece could see its first gas reserves being produced sometime before the end, or towards the end, before the end, excuse me, of this decade. That's the goal. If we're going to use a lot of gas, continue to use a lot of gas in an energy mix, why should we import it from everyone at the end of the day? Why shouldn't we become a net contributors and exporters to help Europe, to help the international markets? And the best way to do that would be to do that through the synergies, the strategic partnership with some of the best private oil companies in the world, the likes of Exxon and Chevron.
There was a question before from Supreme President saying regarding the timeline of the projects and exploration of the hydrocarbons, whether this is going to be accelerated, or because now we have also the US companies that they are into these projects. So do you think that this is going to be accelerated in order for Greece to become an exporter of oil?
It is accelerating. It has been accelerating since 2022. Effectively, we saw that on the field in 2023 by the companies that have acreage under development, under exploration licenses to shoot seismic in ways that have been unprecedented since before the 1980s in Greece. And this process, Exxon, for example, is in the process, and we've heard the announcement that sometime probably within this year, they may take the final investment decision of whether to proceed or not with a drilling campaign. So in Crete, in the southwest of Crete, this was just in the news a couple of days ago. So these are areas of significant risk, geological risk I'm referring to. So we need to let the oil companies to do their work, and they have to go through a very specific and very clear process of managing that risk before they're taking that decision. But it's very important that now we have a much better clear picture of what could potentially lie in the deep waters of the Ionian Sea, and then even deeper waters of the South Cretan Sea, which are the areas that the acreage that has been already licensed off to Exxon. The interest of Chevron is not irrelevant to that. The fact that Exxon came and Exxon is doing what it's doing and is doing it in a very professional way is something which acted as an incentive, as an encouragement for other oil companies, the likes of Chevron, which already are very important, have a very strong presence throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, to express their interest for investing in Greece. And I think that if we have positive exploration news, we have a drilling, and this is a positive drilling, we have a discovery, this is going to change completely the picture of what we're seeing today.
And maybe after a number of years that we are discussing about Greece becoming a clean energy hub, so a hub sending outside Greece solar and wind power, maybe we can discuss something about sending gas and oil production, correct? And is this going to change the stability or the position of Greece in the wider region?
The two policies are not conflicting. They're not conflicting between. They are complementary. They're not self or mutually exclusive. Just to clarify, we're talking about gas, not so much oil. Of course, depending on what we're going to find, but the areas are more probable to give us gas reserves rather than oil reserves. The Greece is already a natural gas hub in the sense that it is exporting Azeri gas through the northern Greece all the way to Europe via Albania and Italy for the TAP pipeline. It is exporting also Azeri gas as well as international LNG, including a lot of American LNG through Alexandroupolis and the IGB pipeline, also through the DESFA's own natural gas transmission system. And it is expanding the capacity to actually do so, as we are the two FSRUs, the two regasification facilities, Alexandroupolis and Vithousa alone, are more than enough to cover twice domestic demand and have served as a major source of re-exporting of gas towards our Northern European countries and colleagues. Mrs. Galli mentioned, as I've heard during the last part of her comments, about the vertical corridor strategy and the importance of that. The vertical corridor starts with Greece, so this is another indication that we're very competitive in playing this in the energy, in the regional energy geopolitics and the regional energy balance of being able to use those capacities, those infrastructures, to export up to 10 to 11 billion cubic meters of gas to the north. The important one is if the demand is sufficient to expedite additional investments which are necessary, not in Greece, but from Bulgaria and importantly Romania and further to the north. To what extent any kind of lifting of sanctions within the context of the ongoing negotiations for a Russian-Ukrainian ceasefire would lead to more Russian gas being exported to Europe. I don't think personally that we're going to see a return to 2021, but we may see a return to 2024 with the potential reactivation of the flow of Russian gas via Ukraine to Eastern Europe, and that would affect the regional balance of supply and demand, or additional developments that may have to do with the monetization of Romanian reserves or the monetization of Turkish reserves, which may change the balance of power. But as these countries are moving, are decarbonizing and trying to move to gas plus renewables and plus potentially, but at a secondary degree, SMRs with regards to small modular reactors and with regards to nuclear power, which is also primarily a patent US technology, we are going to see additional opportunities being developed. As far as the green electricity is concerned, Greece in 2024, for the first time in decades, became a net exporter of electricity, and this is done primarily, as you very well know, because of the expansion of renewable electricity within Greece. We have already 13 gigawatts of installed wind and solar, and we expect to go to up to 24 by the end of this decade. That would make us a net exporter, and of course that would mean that we would require the necessary expansion of interconnections, interconnecting infrastructure to Europe, to Italy, to Germany, via Bulgaria. Already they exist even to even parts of Eastern Europe. That would help us to make best use of that process, and at the same time, this is also balanced by a very ambitious international electricity interconnection policies that will also turn Greece not just a transit, because it's already a transit of gas. Okay, we don't want only to become a transit of green electricity or even green hydrogen. We can both be a transit and a producer, exporter of green electricity, green electrons, and green hydrogen molecules in the 2030s, back to the early 2030s as we begin. And this is part of the overall strategy that we're trying to do with projects such as the interconnector with Saudi Arabia, the interconnectors that we're supporting by Egypt, the interconnections with Israel, but also other projects which are also very important, because you also need to see on the demand side of where demand would be more closer to Europe, the doubling of the tripling actually of the capacity of exports of electricity via Rita to Italy, and probably one of the most important projects that takes little attention, but that might be one of the most strategic infrastructure investments that we'll be discussing in Greece, which is the Galli project, the Green Energy Interconnector, a green electricity cable that would cross the Adriatic Sea and end up via Austria to Germany. And this is something that is also very important to keep in mind.
You mentioned hydrogen, you mentioned the critical raw materials. Ms. Galli, just before, she mentioned that the energy transition is still here, but it will be, let's say, it will proceed in a more realistic way. I think that you agree also on the fact that we are still on the pathway of energy transition, despite some voice that they say otherwise. And we have to combine sources, not to have diversification, correct?
There are no climate deniers in Europe, and certainly not in Greece. Okay, what we need more is climate realists or energy transition realists that would understand that, again, the breach of the energy transition is actually longer and costlier of what people originally thought in 2019 or 2020 or 2021. And we need to have the necessary stability of the electricity grid, the necessary stability and the credibility in terms of having reliable sources and efficient sources of electricity as we digitize our economies, as we accelerate the pace of which is an accelerator that happens because of globalization. It not happens because of government decrees. Okay, this is a reality of what's happening and what's been happening in Europe. So yes, the energy transition is an imperative. The energy transition is unavoidable, and it should be unavoidable. And we should accelerate, but we should accelerate up to the point that we have the technological capability to actually do that without major detrimental effects to our security of supply and to the competitiveness of our economies. This is, I think, would describe the confines, the context of a realist interpretation of the energy transition, which is a must, of course, but it has to also be put into a more balanced approach as it existed in Europe, I underline, as it existed in European energy strategies up to 2019.
Thank you so much, Professor Tsakiris.
Thank you.
We were delighted to hear your views and to have your insights. Thank you again. And
Pleasure.
If you have any question for Mr. Tsakiris.
Thank you very much. How do you see the synergies between Cyprus, Greece, and especially with the developments in Cyprus, with the recent agreement that it was just signed with Egypt? And how do the two giants that are presently active in Cyprus, Chevron and ExxonMobil, will define the climate as far as the reserves here in Greece?
Well, let me start from the second part of your question. Chevron and Exxon is a leading partner is a leader in the Greek exploration process. Chevron is just entering the process, and hopefully it will have an agreement and a concession agreement by the beginning of autumn in Greece. So there is a gap in terms of how active they are, but of course there is no counter argument to the presence of Chevron, to the facilitation of his presence, even why not to the expansion of his interest and presence in the Greek areas of potential exploration. With regards to what you mentioned before about Cyprus, the Cypriot reserves they are significant. If you add them up, they could reach, with the confirmed reserves of Kronos, of Zeus, and of Aphrodite, after 250 billion cubic meters, which is quite significant. Europe consumes 320 billion cubic meters, just to give you an idea. But always the devil is in the details. These are fields which are very far apart. They are small fields. They are fragmented. And they need to have a very specific monetization option, a monetization route to make it to markets. What was signed in Cairo last Monday was important because it's offering such a monetization route to smaller fields which exist in Block 6 of the Cypriot EZ, particularly the Zeus and Kronos and Calypso fields, which together they may have about 140 minimum billion cubic meters of gas reserves. There's a clear path towards its monetization because one of the companies that controls the consortium which develops them, Eni, also controls 50% of the liquefaction capacity in the Damietta LNG facility, which is in Egypt, and has made clear that its option, its strategic priority is to take the gas liquefied and export it to European destinations. So that would be the easiest way and the shortest way to see the monetization of Cypriot gas in LNG form via Egypt, via Eni's share of control in the Damietta LNG in Egypt. But that's not something that's going to happen immediately, even if there is not even a field development plan submitted for these gases. There is no joint monetization plan because these are two separate fields that have to be co-developed. There is no commercial agreement yet, but there is a clear path. So hopefully, contrary to what has happened to the Aphrodite field, which was discovered in 2011 and may begin production in 2031. This is not going to be the future of these reserves that were discovered in 2022. We confirmed some of them in 2024, and hopefully we're going to see them monetized by 28, 29. It depends on how quickly this could happen. The agreement was a strategic reaffirmation of the special relationship that has been developed between Cyprus and Egypt. Greece doesn't play a direct role in that, but it could be Greek LNG, Greek regasification facilities could be a beneficient, could take advantage of these flows. And of course, the entire Greek system could act as a transit hub for these flows if they were going to go to Eastern European destinations. So we have an indirect, Greece has an indirect interest in that, but could also benefit from these developments. And of course, everybody benefits in the sense that you have an expansion and consolidation of the Cypriot-Egyptian relationship, to which Greece, both bilaterally and trilaterally, is a part of and an investor in.
Thank you very much for your participation today. See you soon.
Thank you very much. I'm honored for this, and I hope to see you soon as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tsakiris.
That concludes the first panel. We're going to take a break right now. Before we take a break, I'd like to acknowledge one of our sponsors, SRS Group of Companies, and thank them for sponsoring part of this wonderful panel event today. Let's take a 15-minute break, so please come back at 3:25 while we set up the next panel. There's refreshments outside. Thank you.
Θέλω να τους βλέπω. Είμαστε όμως τρεις. Άρα λοιπόν μπορώ να καθίσω εδώ.
Μόνο τρεις είναι. Εγώ νόμιζα ότι ήταν...
Είναι ο κύριος Σακίνης, ο κύριος Αυλώνας και ο κύριος Αβαλωμένος.
Okay.
Αυτό δεν είναι, είναι κάτι άλλο. Αυτό είναι, ωραία. Ποιοι είμαστε.
Ο moderator είναι ο κύριος.
Πολύ καλά. Το moderator εκεί πέρα. Αυτό μου είπα να κάτσω στην Ισαβελόκη.
Όπου θέλετε. Όπου θέλετε. Εσείς να τα κανονίσετε. Πολύ ευχαριστώ.
Μπορείτε να καθίσετε. Ναι.
Θέλω να καράσω στην σειρά.
Δεν έχει σημασία. Όχι, για να μας βλέπουν από κάτω να διαστρώσουν αυτό.
Έτσι κι αλλιώς τη σειρά θα την κάνουμε upside down. Θα ξεκινήσει ο ένας
Θα έχει ενδιαφέρον
και αυτό θα ξεκινήσει, θα μην καθίστε εσείς δίπλα.
Αυτοί δύο μπαχάκια μου είπε να δω, χωράτε το σήμα του Αρβακή.
Το είδα σήμερα εκεί πέρα που έχω τα διάφορα.
Κύριε Σακίνη, καθίστε εδώ.
Ωραία.
Κύριε Βαλωμένη, καθίστε δίπλα.
Αυτός είναι ο Σάββας ο Τσίβικος, ο πρόεδρος.
Δεν χρειάζεται να γνωρίσω.
Χαίρομαι πάρα πολύ. Ο κύριος Σάββας Τσίβικος, ο ύπατος πρόεδρος.
Ευχαριστούμε για τη διάσταση που κάνετε. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Okay, welcome back. Καθίστε σας παρακαλώ, ευχαριστούμε. Θα ξεκινήσουμε το δεύτερο panel. We're beginning this panel number 2, Sustainability in Today's Marketplace. We have our wonderful moderator, Konstantinos Deriziotis, member of the ACCI Administrative Committee and in charge of Tourism Affairs. He's also the CEO and founder of KSDSA. Welcome, Kyrie Konstantinos. I'll turn it over to you for the introductions.
So, good afternoon to everyone. Dear esteemed guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's conference on sustainability in today's marketplace. In an era where businesses must balance growth with responsibility, sustainability is no longer an option, it's an imperative. The pursuit of business excellence is not intrinsically linked to corporate social responsibility and the commitment to ethical, sustainable and forward-thinking practices. Sustainability is not just about minimizing environmental impact. It's about creating long-term value for businesses, society, and future generations. Companies that embrace responsible practices are not only contributing to a brighter future, but are also gaining a competitive edge in an ever-evolving global market. Consumers, investors, and stakeholders increasingly expect businesses to act with purpose, accountability, and innovation. Today, we have gathered to explore how sustainability can drive business success while fostering a more inclusive and resilient economy. Throughout this event, we will hear from distinguished speakers, share insights, and discuss strategies that can help shape a more sustainable and responsible marketplace. I encourage you all to engage actively, exchange ideas, and collaborate towards meaningful change. Together, we can redefine business success and build a future where profitability and sustainability go hand in hand. We have 5 minutes for presentations, and after we have some questions, and of course discuss. Let's start with Professor Avlonas.
Thank you so much for the great invitation on behalf of AHEPA. Thank you so much, Savas, for the kind invitation and this opportunity. So first of all, let me say how important is the job of AHEPA in the corporate sustainability in philanthropy, because corporate philanthropy is a very important part of corporate sustainability. They're coming all together, and because of the AHEPA, so many things are happening in US, but also in Greece as well, as most of you are aware of. So a few things about sustainability. I have only 4 minutes. So first of all, I have 2 hats here, the hat of the president of the Center for Sustainability and Excellence, which we are very active in the US for 14 years now. We're based in Chicago, and we have worked both with government and with Fortune 500 companies there. I had the pleasure to advise SEC, Stock and Exchange Commission, back in 2021 for the creation of the first climate rule in US 4 years ago, and also as Vice President of the Corporate Responsibility Institute here in Greece, where it represents about 20% of GDP of Greece. The companies that are members of CRI, the Corporate Responsibility Institutes, are about representing 20% of GDP in Greece. So with those 2 hats, I was very active both in US in terms of legislation and sustainability, but also in Greece as part of my contribution as well. So wearing these 2 hats, I can speak for both parts of the Atlantic, US and Greece, on what's happening on sustainability. And of course, as you probably don't know, sustainability movement is really growing the last couple of years in both ways, both in Greece or in Europe overall, and also in US for many different reasons. As our coordinator mentioned, it's a necessity. It's not a nice thing to do anymore. It was a nice thing to do a few years ago, not anymore. So the first thing I want to highlight is that the drivers of sustainability in US are different than in Europe. As you probably are aware, in Europe, there is a legislation requirements, very tough legislation requirements. So in Greece and all over Europe, the companies now have to comply with very complicated, sustainability-related regulations. In US, and this is a great thing, it's a nice thing to do. And I like that. I like that because voluntarily, the companies do that and they show leadership and commitment. And this is great because they feel proud about that. They don't need to meet necessarily, the very complex legislation in Europe, but they do that because they think this is part of their job. So in US, the sustainability movement is very high. Investors are the key drivers, but also you guys, the Generation Z and millennials. All of you, and I know that because I was many years professor at the University of Illinois in Chicago, they want to work with companies that they really have a high commitment on the environment. You don't want to work with companies that they're not environmental committed. So this is very important for both of generations. So in both sides, sustainability movement is going really, really high right now. It's a requirement or a nice thing to do, but people feel proud about that. And finally, I want to say is that in both sides, they understand that this is a new reality right now. The things in the world has been changed. Sustainability are the new reality, and all the business, including government organizations, they need to apply practices, initiatives, including corporate philanthropy, of course, in order to become more competitive, but also more appealing to their clients, investors, and other important stakeholders, including their employees. The employees today is one of the most important stakeholders of every company, and the more sustainable a company is, the more happy are the employees as well. There are several research about that. Also, last thing is that CSC did a very big research. We do a very big research in the US for now 10 years, since 2016. And we identify strong links between profitability and corporate sustainability in the most profitable companies in US and Canada combined. And there's strong links in stock price increase, strong link in reduction of risk, and strong link in reputation of a company and the opportunity that the investors see into these companies. So investors overall, doesn't matter in which political party they vote for, they trust companies that are sustainable because they're going to secure their investors, their investments, in the long term. So as you know, this is not politics, and I don't believe that sustainability has to do with politics. It's a pure scientific issue, it's a pure business thing, and therefore companies should move forward towards this direction, no matter what the politicians say, either in Europe or in US.
Thank you, Professor Avlonas. Mr. Valomenos, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I'm very pleased and proud being here today. Thank you for the invitation. Thank the organizers. Thanks to the moderator, my co-panelists. So we are the lawyers of the panel, Bahas Grammatidis and partners, half-century law firm. Sustainability, if you search, let's start from the definition. I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes as it is the schedule, and then we have rounds of questions. So I intend to start from the definition. If you said what sustainability means, it's not simply the ability to sustain, but to do that firstly, over a period of time, not forever, and secondly, to distribute a positive outcome and benefit to the stakeholders. So any entity is not for the shareholders, value only, is not for the investors and shareholders, but for the stakeholders. Number one stakeholder is environment. Number two, it is the society. Number three is the governance. That forms the abbreviation which you know, ESG. ESG is the abbreviation and the simplified word of saying sustainability. And now let me indicate to you some key words related to sustainability. Number one is compliance. That means that the entities has to form internal regulations which have to be maintained, to be staffed by appropriate personnel, technical and legal, the so-called ESG officers. Why? Because starting from the mid-90s and the beginning of the 20s, especially during the last 10, 15 years, and I'm talking about EU, European Union, we moved from soft law, the simple practice, to hard law. So we have a set of mandatory rules which progressively cover more entities. They've started with the so-called big entities of public interest, and then they go to the medium-sized entities until to small, very small. In Europe, this started in 2024, and then this year and the next year, it will end up to smaller entities. So it's an issue where one size does not fit all. It's a progression starting from, as we know from the clause, from extra large, from medium, small, and extra small. This is the background. Now, compliance and strict set of rules means also liability. This is another key word, liability for the managers. Why? Because you may have heard about ESG litigation or climate change litigation. These are related things. We will see in the years to come more litigation which is supported by funds, by the funders, and which have to do with whether the companies manage to comply with the mandatory set of rules. The next key question is cost. All that stuff means cost for the companies. And the cost relates to other two key words, which is competitiveness towards, for example, US or Chinese companies that do not have to comply with all these rules, and competition. ESG and sustainability changes the rules of competition. There is a great discussion in the EU today of whether the strict application of competition law is the appropriate one to deal with ESG agreements. Now, in Greece, there is a great staff of various surveys, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, Athens Stock Exchange, ICAP. We had in 23 the first list of the top 100 companies, Greek companies, categorized in 6 categories based on the ESG application rules. And together with that, and I'm going to now close, the last key question is dispute resolution. Dispute resolution related to ESG and to climate change means that the companies must set up and form quick, flexible means of out-of-court settlements, especially by mediation. I don't know whether you have heard about mediation, it's not the time to expand on that, but due to this, quickly resolved disputes, the companies can handle the expected greater lawsuits or other claims that are going to face in the years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shiameshis, you have the speech.
I'll take this one. So first of all, the advertising break. Bahas Grammatidis is also one of our lawyers, okay? So, but let me go on and start talking about sustainability and talk about the sustainable relationship that I have with AHEPA, which started when I was a teenager. I lived in Greece, and then my relatives there invited me to come and go and join them at the AHEPA conventions. Had a lot of great time and a lot of fun, and thank you very much for that opportunity, and nice to be back here for this opportunity. But after all that, I did go. I liked it so much that I did move to the United States and stayed there for about 27 years. 2 years in Boston for graduate school. Anyone from Massachusetts here? No? Okay, 4 years in Texas. Texas? Come on. All of you from New Jersey, Connecticut, nowhere? Where are you guys from? So anyways, so I spent 27 years in the United States and came back here for 15 years. Now I've been here for 15 years. If you're good at math, you can figure out what my age is. Let me say that one of the things that I learned by living both there and here, and actually when I was in the United States, I ran companies that were global companies. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. As you see, we have global connections. So when I was in the United States, I ran global companies, and I learned the importance of best practices, which I apply in my life, and I apply to the companies that I run, including best practices in sustainability. Along these lines, for what I do, which is right now running the water company of Athens, serving about 5 million people, we talk to all the CEOs around the world, a lot of the CEOs of similar companies in the United States, from Los Angeles to San Diego and Phoenix and Las Vegas and New York. By the way, the head of wastewater services in New York is Greek-American. And amazingly, he looks exactly like our wastewater services person here in Athens. I don't know how that happened. So we use these best practices. We go all the way to Singapore. And the best practices really focus on how we best use not only the water resources that we have, but since energy is our second largest cost after people, it is how we optimize our energy use, which is very important because water and energy are on the E side of ESG that you mentioned earlier, but that's very important on how we do our best in those areas, because that affects the S. Because by doing the best job in energy and water, we can reduce the costs to the minimum possible, providing the best service, which is important for the society that we serve. So to do all that, you need good governance. And in the last several years, we have simplified the governance of in the water industry. We lobbied to have one regulator for water and energy, which are the two areas for us. And we also lobbied and we achieved to have one ministry that is looking after us, that also includes water and energy. So simplifying things, following best practices, I think that is good for everybody, and that is what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Impressively fast. And last but not least,
talk more.
Mr. Tsivigos.
On behalf of the organization, I would like to really thank you for participating today, giving us the opportunity to see your perspectives. And it's interesting that many of your perspectives when it comes to sustainability, it doesn't matter where you live, here in Greece or in the USA or in Europe, as you defined it, it comes with the same meaning everywhere we are. So I thank you again, and looking forward to continue this dialogue in the future as well.
So thank you, and now we continue with the questions, with the part of questions. And let's start with Mr. Shiameshis. What is the ELPE strategy for sustainable water resource management, and how does it align with its business model?
Okay, let me elaborate on some of the things that I mentioned earlier. Again, if you think about water, you can't just think about water, you have to think about water and energy. So if you think about water, it is important to save water, not to waste water. So we bring water to Athens from the mountains about 300 kilometers away, which is in western Greece, Nafpaktos. So we bring it from there, and we bring it with gravity. And
central Greece.
mainly more, yeah, it's above Nafpaktos, okay, yeah, it's from Mevinos, and actually, because of drought, we have some plans even to bring it all the way from Pindos, from Yanina, again, mostly with gravity. So we bring the water, but obviously, if you have 300 kilometers of canals and tunnels and whatever, you have some leaks. So we do invest quite a lot of money to repair those leaks. Then when you have a network within Athens of about 14,000 kilometers length, you have again to make sure that you reduce your leaks. But again, you have to be very careful because we have 23% NRW, non-revenue water. Of that 23%, 15% of that, or not 15%, 15 percentage points is water that we lose. In Israel, they have close to zero. Okay, so the question is, how much do you invest to ensure that you go to zero? Okay, because the water that we get with gravity is quite inexpensive, about 15 cents per cubic meter. But if I were to change all the pipes in Athens, it would cost about 2 billion euros. So you have. For the benefit of the consumer, you have to make the decisions on where you invest. So we use artificial intelligence, we use other models to figure out where the pipelines have issues or where they may have issues. So we go and fix those areas, and we're investing for that about 200-300 million euros over the next 10 years. And then the water continues. No, it doesn't go to zero. Too expensive to go to zero. Okay, but so we have the curve that we figure out up to how much we need to. What makes sense? Where do you get the optimal return for the investment that you make? And then the company is quite complex because you don't stop with the water, then you go into the wastewater. So all that goes to, a lot of that, about 90% goes to the second largest wastewater treatment plant in Europe. We have 5 wastewater treatment plants overall, but we're also building new pipes in Eastern Attica, 1,400 kilometers long. That's a distance equal to Athens to Budapest. And we're building another 4 wastewater treatment plants. And we are also trying to figure out, the water that we produce from there is clean, but we're making it cleaner, 4th level treatment, which means that you can use it to irrigate or for industrial uses. And that's a big plan and big investment to do that. And then we do investments in energy, so we become a net energy user. So we don't buy energy, we can produce all of that by ourselves. Actually, the water that comes with gravity all the way from the mountains produces energy for us on the way here. Even the wastewater, the treated wastewater that goes into the Thessalonic Gulf and it drops 5 meters, we even produce energy from that. We have built, and we're going to we'll be building more solar farms. And we're going to optimize the energy production of the large wastewater treatment plant to actually burn the biogas that we produce together with the semi-dried sludge that we have to figure out the optimal mix of biogas production and electricity production. Overall, that is about 2.5 billion euros in investments over the next 10 years. And that does not include the $500 million of additional investments that we have to make on behalf of the Greek state in order to extend our water resources, the project that I mentioned to you from Pindos, which we hope to do before we run out of water.
Thank you. Mr. Envaloumenos, what is the role of legal frameworks in shaping and enforcing sustainable business practices?
Thank you. I will reply to your question, but allow me to comment. The water still remains. I mean, it has to be cheap. It is #1 valuable commodity. Imagine the Greek islands suffer from drinkable water. It's not a joke, okay? It's a very serious issue. So water is very important for all of us. And
Can I comment on that?
of course. This is why
I do need to comment on that.
Why I made that pass on you.
The Greek islands suffer from lack of planning. Okay, they don't suffer from lack of clean water because they have water all around them, and if they have planned ahead the right infrastructure and to put the desalination units, they would have absolutely no issue. Okay,
can I add? I'm sorry, Mr. Balamenos, but can I add that the whole Greece is missing planning, not only the islands?
Not the part where AVAP serves people. Outside that part, okay.
But please answer the question because maybe we have to stay here till the night.
Okay, sorry, but I wanted to make it more discussable. Okay, so as I said earlier, the legal background is there. So the reply to this question, you must know that we already know the questions, okay? And we reply based on the previous. This means a good preparation, okay? As mentioned earlier, the legal framework has to be compliant with. That means skill, knowledge, expertise, training to comply with the legal background, which I said is mandatory, is not optional, and progressively it will extend and cover every company, okay, through the years. This means cost, I said, so the legal background must be monitored by the appropriate ESG officers, as said, the appropriate employees of the company, and why? It will have to be, #1 important, I said, due to the liability, because non-compliance results to liability of the managers towards the company, liability of the company towards third parties, not only the consumers, but the whole supply chain of the company, the agents, subcontractors, suppliers, and everyone. As already said, and I repeat that and finish, ESG litigation is on the rise. It will continue to be on the rise due to the climate change and due to the very strict rules. A last point is that due to the very heavy regulation within the EU, a discussion has already started of a kind of deregulation. This European sustainability reporting, the huge reporting amount that has to be done by the companies is being noticed as very severe and costly, and it's already a discussion and to which extent that this must be decreased and eased so that they allow the EU corporations to compete towards non-EU entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next time I will change the questions, you have to know. So now, Professor Avlonas, based on your experience, how has the concept of sustainability evolved in business over the past years?
Yes. Before I answer this question, I have a question for the audience, especially for the youngest one, down there. How many planets we need if the average Indian and Chinese middle class is going to consume like the average European class? I need to guess.
Say it again.
Again, one more time. How many planets we're going to need if the average Indians and Chinese combined, we're going to consume like the average Europeans?
More than 2.
Oh?
More than 2.
Right? But I need the specific answer, yes. 4. The right answer is 3. And guess what? The Indian economy is booming. Chinese economy is not doing great, but the middle class is booming as well. So we are very close to be at the threshold where the Indian and Chinese class combined middle class is consuming the same like the European one. So you can imagine what is going to happen to the cost of the material. I'm not going to say nothing more, and with any kind of material. So answering briefly to your question, there was very big changes in sustainability in the last couple of years for two main reasons. First of all, Europe. Right now in Europe, sustainability is part of financing. So it's mandatory part of financing. So if you are a small, medium enterprise and you want to get financed, you need to meet 120 criteria. And it's not going to be easy, by the way. So there is an integration of financing in Europe with sustainability. And I hope you all understand this is a game changer for any kind of business. And I'm not talking about ADAP here. I'm talking about small, medium enterprises, but they need financing. The second thing is that the EU vision on becoming carbon neutral by 2050 has created more than 100 legislations. Some of them has been already referred by Mr. Balomenos. But to be honest, these legislations are very complex, unfair for many businesses, especially for medium-sized business. And there's a lot of discussion in EU right now if this legislation make European business less competitive than the American, for example, business or any other business around the globe. So there's a big question there and a big discussion right now within EU, which is suddenly waking up into the new environment. A third thing is that legislation is great, make things happen for lawyers, for consultants, for many people around that, but it's not necessarily create commitments on behalf of organizations. So personally, I believe in the voluntary part of sustainability and in the great leadership. We have one great leader here, Mr. Tsakiris, who has did a fantastic job the last couple of years, beyond any kind of legislation, to be honest, because he wanted to do that and he believed in that. That kind of leaders I think we need in sustainability today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Avalomenos, what are the biggest legal challenges companies face when adopting ESG policies?
Well, many things have been already said. The challenges, the legal challenges are basically to avoid liability, I believe, and to try to bridge the cost with efficient management. I mean, all companies want to sustain. Of course, no one can expect that it will sustain for ever. However, sustainability means to also, as I said in the beginning, must also, you have to distribute externally a positive outcome. You have to have a positive impact socially in governance and, of course, in the environment. So the challenge, the legal challenge, is to take all that stuff of mandatory legislation, whether this legislation will remain as it is now or will be eased, it remains to be seen. So to take all that existing legislation and try to incorporate in the entity, in its particular entity, to the benefit of the stakeholders, and at the same time remaining competitive. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Avlonas, what are the key steps a company should take to strategically integrate sustainability into its business model?
Yes, there are 3 steps. First of all, the first step is the leader truly commits sustainability. The second step is that the leader truly commits sustainability. And the third step is the leaders under the leader truly commit sustainability.
Thank you for the brief. Mr. Tsakiris, what innovative practices are you implementing to reduce environmental impact and improve efficiency in water management?
Okay. First of
3,
all,
I think it's 3 also.
3 minutes.
You like Professor Avlonas.
Okay. First of all, I have to return the compliment. And since he talked about leaders and sustainability and all of that, you know, all leaders have to have someone to guide them, someone from whom they can learn. And Mr. Avlonas has been that kind of mentor for our company and for many other companies, both in Greece and the United States. So thank you for that. So some of the things that I'm saying here are because of him, okay? So it's not just me. Let me go to another comment, because we have to know where we stand. And we talked about India and China. I'll give you another calculation, another one of those. And I didn't get that from ChatGPT. I calculated myself. The Greek population is 1/280th of the population of China and India combined. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how much more we have to try, or how much more we have to learn from best practices, so we can grow faster, so we can do the things that we need better, cheaper, because cost is also important as well. So again, what was the question? The question is.
The question is, what innovative practices are you implementing to reduce environmental impact and improve efficiency in water management?
Right. So my 3 minutes start now. As I told you earlier, I mentioned some of these practices earlier, and we use best practices across the whole chain, both in water and electricity. I do want, because this is very important, I do want to focus really on recycling, because especially when you are in a period where you have climate crisis, and especially in Greece, you have significant drought the last few years that depleted half of our reservoirs. So basically, if you have 2 more years like that, you will have no water for Athens. So their recycling water is extremely important. We are already doing that in small scale, but we're going to do it in grander scale. I mentioned our Italia plant, which is large. We're going to do that. We have another plant, and we're going to take it with a 3-kilometer pipeline. We're going to take all the recycled water that now gets wasted into the Eleftheriadis Gulf and take it to Hellenic Petroleum for their refinery, and they're going to use all of that instead of using clean water. And I'll tell you another thing. There's this big project, the Hellenic project, the largest real estate project in Greece and the most expensive real estate. Right in there, right in the middle of that, there's going to be a recycling plant for the wastewater of that area. And actually, not only the wastewater from that area, they're going to take the waste coming in all the way from Varkiza, that goes all the way to Psyttalia, and bring some of that in. That's going to be our operation, process it, and use the water to irrigate all the Hellenic project and the Gulf next to it. And we're going to take that same technology and make smaller installations like that for some of the bigger parks in Attica, because we believe that it's definitely a nice, important, innovative technology that can also conserve some of the resources, some of the water resources.
Thank you. Professor Avlonas, how does sustainability impact corporate reputation and competitiveness in today's market?
I would say 100%. Right now, let's take a Greek medium-sized export company right now. If they don't meet the requirements of sustainability of their clients, they cannot even export their products. And there are many, by the way, because of the European legislation. So high impact in terms of legislation on behalf of clients or requirements. Secondly, financing, which I raised before. Third, credibility. 85% of the consumers in Greece believe that the organization should be truly committed in sustainability, and they should do many initiatives which would be visible at every time of the year. So consumers want from the companies to do more, not only on the local communities, but also on the environment as well. And thirdly, they're not going to be able to attract talents and Generation Z, because this kind of young people, students or professionals, they're going to work for companies that they really are sustainable, and they're going to prefer this company. So I think there is no way out right now. There is a truly important for the companies to highly commit on sustainability, and I hope we're good on time, more or less. Thank you.
And now, Mr. Avlonas, what changes do you foresee in sustainability regulations within the European Union, and how can business prepare for them?
I will be short, because you are in a short time. Yeah, okay. Now, the body of the EU legislation will continue to expand and cover eventually all kinds of companies. We see supplemented legislation, which is the greenwashing. I don't know whether you know what greenwashing is, and green claims. So the companies not to cheat about the green effect of their products. So we will see a whole body of legislation. However, at the same time, in the years to come, and due to the need of EU competition vis-à-vis non-EU entities, a lot of legislation will be eased so that to make companies more competitive. The companies have any way to be prepared and to comply with. The latest corporate sustainability due diligence legislation of 24, which will be implemented next year, will cover US entities being active within the EU. So things going stricter. Outside the EU, I don't know whether it will be an amendment or not. And last but not least, the companies have to prepare and apply quick dispute resolution mechanisms. The companies must avoid going to the courts. It's not an ESG practice go to the court. The ESG practice is to resolve disputes outside the courts, such as by mediation, for example, and for other appropriate means, which is the only ESG practice, quick and imminent resolving dispute, and the only practice that can facilitate long-term relations. Because think that an entity and all that stakeholders with an entity have long-term relationships. The subcontractors, the suppliers, the employees. Everyone has long-term relationships, may only maintained by a quick out-of-court resolution of disputes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 7 minutes more or not? Because our session is 45 minutes and we start at 15:45. We have or not? Because if we have more time, we can take some questions from the audience. Okay. Is there any question?
Yes, sir. Desalination? Is there anything in that program?
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, desalination is very important for Greece. And as we talked about also, you have to keep the cost the lowest possible level. So if I can get more water from the mountains of Pindos at 15 cents a cubic meter, and desalination costs somewhere, depending on your energy costs or some other efficiencies or that are specific to certain locations, somewhere between 65 cents and $1.20 per cubic meter, you have to prefer the less expensive solution and then put desalination where you don't have other options. So a lot of the islands, or most of the islands, I would say, desalination is probably the only option or close to that. There is some other option, but I don't want to mention it right now. So for most of the islands, desalination. And for some other areas that are far away from other water, mountainous, let's say, water sources, again, even there, desalination is the only solution. But we have to plan it. You have to plan it because also how big of a plant you build has to do with how many are your leaks. So for example, in Corfu, they have like 60-65% leaks. So you have to build a huge plant
with a huge problem in the tourism.
Yeah.
A huge problem.
Of course, for Greece, though, there's water everywhere. You know,
yeah.
It seems like a good long-term solution, even at the cost.
You always, because you have an obligation to the consumers, you always have to plan not only town by town, but you have to have a bigger plan and find the least expensive solution, because the consumer is going to pay that for that cost, okay? So you're responsible towards the consumer, and that's why we have a regulator who's also responsible to ensure that you do the right job for the consumer.
Thank you. Is there any other question? So, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today insightful discussions on sustainability, I want to sincerely thank our distinguished speakers for sharing their expertise and valuable perspectives. Their insights have shed light on the critical role of sustainability in business excellence, corporate responsibility, and long-term success. Sustainability, as they told, is not just a trend, it's a fundamental shift in how business operate, grow, and contribute to society. The conversations we have had today reminds us that responsible business practices are essential for operating a more resilient and inclusive economy. I also want to extend my gratitude to all of you for your active participation and engagement. The exchange of ideas and best practices is what drives meaningful change. Encourage you to take today's lessons and turn them into action within your organizations and industries. Goodbye. Thank you very much.
It's important to note that AHEPA has managed to sustain the strong presence for 103 years. So if you need any examples of sustainability, we are it. Thank you very much. But regulation is never good for anything. Over-regulation, and hopefully the Europeans will reconsider the tons of regulation. Yeah.
I'd like to thank Mr. Deriziotis and this esteemed panel. Please give them a round of applause. Please remain in your seats. We're going to go right into the last panel. As soon as they get off the stage, I'm going to invite our next panelists. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Mr. President, please stay. Yeah. Yep. Mr. Ambassador from Israel to the Hellenic Republic, Mr. Noam Katz, please join us. And representing the Ambassador of Cyprus to Greece, Mr. Stavros Avgoustidis, is the Deputy Chief of Mission and Counselor, Mr. Neophytos Konstantinou. Thank you both. And of course, we have our Supreme President, Mr. Savas Tsivicos. My name is Nicholas Karakostas. I'm the Chairman of the Board of AHEPA. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you again. And I'm grateful for the good work of AHEPA and all the volunteers and all the members internationally who serve philanthropic and community causes every day. This particular panel is sponsored by our not-for-profit tax-deductible 501c3 called the AHEPA Foundation, Inc., and you'll be seeing more events and panels that will be sponsored by the AHEPA Foundation, Inc. as we go forward. So once again, I thank you, gentlemen. I thank you for being here. Unfortunately, there is no representative from the Greek government here. It was my hope that they would send somebody and I would be asking them the first question, but seeing that there's no one here, I will move on to the other pivotal countries. Of course, Israel, Cyprus, United States of America. And my first question will go to the representative of Cyprus, Mr. Neophytos Konstantinou. I'm going to ask each individual here a couple of questions, but I do want questions from the audience. So as you hear their remarks, please feel free to think of a question so that I could call upon you at the end. Mr. Konstantinou, welcome. The Eastern Mediterranean remains a focal point of geopolitical competition, particularly concerning Turkey's and broader regional disputes. how does Cyprus coordinate with Greece and Israel, among others, in efforts to strengthen their response to these challenges?
Thank you. The Republic of Cyprus, despite the fact that it's a small island country, made some, let's say, brave decisions in the past to expand the foreign policy footprint, not just in the region, but globally. This is a very difficult task, of course, but you have to start from your own neighborhood in order to do that. So as a full member state of the EU, together with Greece, we have started this very promising and growing relationship with Israel in the pattern of the trilateral mechanisms. It's been more than 14 years now that our countries realize that there is a real need to focus on regional security, on problems of daily life of our citizens, when it comes to the environment and so many other policy fields, to sit down together and discuss how we proceed. Now, we all need a stable environment in order to bring investments, and a vital element you always need is trust. Believe me, because I served in the States and I've seen this relationship growing with the Embassy of Israel, the US government, the Greek embassy over there, since 2013, at least. I think a few years before we had the first steps. But we do have trust, and that's the very important element that you take and you proceed. Now, in the region, you mentioned a country that obviously does not play with the rules, and we hope that someday they will understand the common interests that regional partnership could bring. We always invite them, and we just hope that they will play with the rules of the game and stay away from actions that may bring unrest and tensions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight. A follow-up question regarding something that was proposed in November by President Christodoulidis. He actually, in his meeting with President Biden, floated the notion of Cyprus joining NATO. What can you tell us about this proposal and what will happen next?
Cyprus is already part of the, let's say, Western security structures. This is not, there's no question about that. We are full member state of the EU. We participate in certain partnerships that the European defense agencies organized. And as you know, the EU and NATO enjoy a relationship. We hope that this relationship will continue growing. But Cyprus is always ready to expand its vision, and that's why the President himself wanted to show and make clear that we're open to this prospect, despite the fact that we don't feel really invited by a certain member of the alliance. But we will continue striving towards this direction. There's no question that we need to advance our presence, not just in soft power, but we all have to secure our own structures when it comes to critical infrastructure or advance our defense capabilities. And in this volatile and turbulent region, it's the only reasonable thing to do, I think. Yeah.
Very good, thank you. Ambassador Katz, how does Israel's strategic alliance with Greece and Cyprus, coupled with support from the United States, of course, contribute to deterrence and stability in the region?
I think that our strategic partnership, first with Greece, secondly, the regional with Cyprus, and of course, our special relations with the United States are a pillar of stability in a very unstable region. Our partnership is based first on values, democratic values, liberal values, And secondly, on joint interest and common perception of the challenges that we are facing. Geostrategically, and I'm thinking now about Israel, that experienced the toughest war since independence, is that today, geostrategically, our position is much stronger than it was before the war. We have managed in 15 months to change the balance within the Middle East and to open new avenues that will increase potentially the stability in our region. I'll speak about some of the joint interest. I'm thinking about Greece. Greece is part of Europe. It has to manage relation with a very strong neighbor, with a lot of friction, historically and now frictions. It is the longest border of Europe, 14,000 of kilometers, that has to be defended when volatility all around, whether it's Africa with political instability, with climatic changes that drive people out of the place, whether it's the Middle East, are threatening to overflow Europe in migrants. So you have plenty of challenges, but these challenges are also advantages. Greece geostrategically is the gate from the east into Europe. When we think about the need, and somebody talked about it before, about the need to connect the Far East, the Indo-China area, which is growing in its importance, not only demographically, but also when we think about production, to connect it to Europe. When we have a situation of reglobalization, it means that the globalization that we thought that is so stable is shifting, and we see different hemispheres that are being developed and competing. New routes of trade, of connectivity are important. And Israel and Greece are sitting in the same region, on the same corridor. So the political idea is called IMEC. It's one of the potential corridors that will link the Indo-Pacific with Europe. When we think about stability, and I think about the new administration that just entered into power in the United States, and the new president, I see new opportunities in our region. President Trump is committed to expanding peaceful relations within the Middle East. He was the architect of the Abraham Accord that expanded the network of peace between Israel and Arab neighbors. He's committed, he's stating it repeatedly, that he's committed to expand it. He sees the threat that Iran is posing to the region. Iran has weakened because of our war. Israel degraded all the proxies of Iran and the Iranian capacity itself. Still, Iran is the major threat for stability in the region and for world stability, especially with its military and nuclear ambition. President Trump said that he is committed that Iran will not have military and nuclear capacity. President Trump is also committed to expand when we think about the network of security in the Middle East. He sees eye to eye in a very simplistic way, which is the right way to look on things. Radical forces in our region are the threat for peace and stability. And therefore, when we think about our relations with Palestinians, he say, without Hamas. As simple as that. So I think that we have a lot of opportunities ahead of us. I think that this partnership that we have with Cyprus, with Greece, is a pillar of stability. And of course, the United States is one of the main assets of this partnership.
Thank you for that very detailed answer. We appreciate the honesty. As a follow-up and more positive, the energy cooperation among Greece, Israel, and Cyprus has been a defining pillar for regional strategy, particularly through projects like the EastMed pipeline and gas exploration initiatives. How should this trilateral alliance evolve in the face of this shifting global energy dynamics and regional geopolitical pressures that you've just articulated?
Well, the East Med idea, it's an idea, it's a concept. It's a concept that says that we have to connect our resources and our capabilities. I spoke before about corridors. Corridors are not only routes of trade. It's not only roads or ports. It's also energy connectivity. There is a thirst. Modern societies are relying on energy. All our advancement, all our technology rely on energy, and in order to achieve that, we have to work together. So we have common resources, and we have to think of how we are utilizing them the most effectively. Some of them are fossil, like gas. Some of them are future, maybe hydrogen. Some of them are renewables. And what we have is to connect our grids and capacity, whether it's through more capacity to produce LNG, and it was discussed with Cyprus, between Israel and Greece and Cyprus, maybe to establish some LNG capacity in Cyprus to allow getting out more of the Eastern Mediterranean energy resources. We are speaking about interconnectors that will cross. Israel will be part of it, but you know, the world is speaking of more interconnectors because of this thirst. So I see here a win-win situation when we are combining our efforts for more.
Thank you very much for that response. Mr. Supreme President, as the president of the largest Greek-American organization internationally, in your opinion, what role can the Greek diaspora play through organizations like AHEPA, 103 years of history, play in advancing Greece's strategic and economic interests in the U.S. and in the East Med and hopefully beyond?
Well, let me say that it's a great honor to be leading this organization, but at the same time, it's a huge responsibility as well. AHEPA has been on the front line for over a century, Mr. Ambassador, and has been the voice of the community and a bridge between the United States, Greece, and Cyprus. We're very fortunate that we have developed a wonderful relationship with the Conference of the largest Jewish American organizations, and every 2 years we have a joint delegation that visits Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. And through that, we cultivate what you talked about, enhancing that relationship. But as United States, as American citizens, we of course look everything through the American perspective. Yes, we are of Hellenic descent, but it takes two to tango. So we have seen the bad times, and we have seen the most wonderful times we have right now. And I believe in opportunities. You mentioned before that even though there is a crisis, but through crisis, you come closer. And I think the three countries to be viewed, this is huge. This is a major shift in the American foreign policy, by the way. For the United States to consider Greece, Cyprus, and Israel as strategic partners and pillars of stability in the Eastern Mediterranean, pillars of stability, security, and peace. It's a huge, huge development. Of course, when you have a crisis like your own country is going through right now, then you look at things in a different perspective. And you count your friends, and you remember your friends. Today, as you know, it was a very terrible day in Israel. But the developments have made everybody refocus their attention on what's happening in the Middle East. And I'm going to repeat again what I have said to the Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, last time we were in, do not over-focus on Iran and neglect the other who is looking at you every day, that is Turkey. I don't have to tell you about the daily threats, the daily insults, and everything else. So there are two challenges, in my opinion. One coming from that direction, and the other one is coming from the other direction. But we have a new sheriff in town, recommitted for peace in the area. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think the three countries, along with the United States, can play a very, very important role. And our organization is there to continue educating our elected officials, continue making new friends, and advocating our common interest. I'm not concerned at all. I think the relationships are going to develop at a new high, especially as a result of the developments we had in Ukraine and now in the Middle East. For me, it's promising because it makes everybody refocus on the real problems and identifies the loyal and reliable allies. Thank you.
So you didn't answer the question about the diaspora and the organization, but now that you made that statement, I have a follow-up question for all.
I thought I did.
You're talking about Trump administration. I want you to talk about AHEPA.
I spoke about AHEPA.
Okay. One second.
All right.
As a follow-up to your point, which is a very good one, as the relationship between Israel, Cyprus, Greece deepens in diplomatic engagement, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, how should each country navigate the evolving U.S. foreign policy priorities in the region that have now been put forward under the Trump administration? Anyone?
At the end of the day, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. Every country should do and proclaim what the new president has done. America first, Greece first, Israel first, Cyprus first. All of the countries in the partnership try to develop this relationship where it's a win-win situation, not on the expense of each other. And our organization can play a very important role in that through our grassroots in the United States, educating our elected officials, making new friends. But the most important thing is education. If they understand the importance of this partnership, and if they understand the issues, if they understand the daily threats of the territorial integrity of Greece by the neighbors, Turkey, if they understand that 50 years later Cyprus still remains occupied, then we have succeeded as an organization in playing a role. And as I said earlier, working with our Jewish friends, the largest Jewish American organizations, it helps all of us to project that special relationship.
Probably all know that back in October 2024, a strategic dialogue was launched between the US government and the Republic of Cyprus, and was inspired that this dialogue will continue and will grow because, as I mentioned before, we do have trust in each other. And a shared vision for the region is still there, and the commitment is there. And also, I wanted to add to something I mentioned before about the trilateral partnership. There's also another very important component coming up, the 3+1 partnership, where the US is coming into this platform and helping and putting under their auspices certain initiatives. This dialogue never stopped. There were suggestions coming and circulated around the capitals, and we aspire to continue on that platform as well.
Maybe I will add one point. Our relations with the United States, we define them as special. It's not a formal alliance. It's deep alliance that is rooted in values, in perception, in understanding the world around us. And we are proud that it is bipartisan in the United States, that whoever is the president or the administration in the United States, the friendly and special relations are being kept. It's easier when you have an administration that is committed and declaring it repeatedly to the things that we see are as vital for our national security and well-being. And therefore, I think that we have a unique opportunity that brings together also our partners in the region to benefit from that and to increase stability. We will have to take the opportunity not to be passive about it, but to be also active and to try to achieve the most that we can during this period.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. At this time, I'd like to open up to the floor if there's any questions of any of our honorable speakers. Yes, sir.
I know that the Turkish impasse is critical and very difficult to get over politically and diplomatically. But would there be any possibility of economic rapprochement that would help with the development of the Eastern Mediterranean?
Well, as I said before, Cyprus is quite open to partnerships in the region, but it makes sense to have your aspiring partners abiding with certain rules. If you have one partner that is challenging your territorial waters, your sovereignty, and does not recognize your entity as a state, I don't think it's a starter. I mean, there are many things, basic things that they have to do in order to come into that next level, which is, of course, economic partnership in many ways. We open up in the past and we suggested to delimitate our EEZs. Of course, there was no answer, but we'll continue to be open to discussions. But again, respect to international law for us is very important, as you understand. And since Cyprus is still divided, occupied by Turkey, and this is a word that we will continue saying and not be embarrassed about that, because it is an occupation. It's been 50 years now, but we cannot really leave it behind because it's an anomaly. It disturbs the daily life of people there, and would like to see some prospects opening up. And that's why President Christodoulidis is suggested and put some extra effort into inviting the other side to return back to the table of negotiations. And we hope that we'll see something in the near future. There is an informal meeting, that five-party meeting that will take place probably in March. But we stay vigilant and very open and positive that a change will come into their perspective as well. Thank you.
Might be more hopeful?
That's a tough question, and poster.
We're diplomats. We don't answer hypothetical questions.
We want to focus to the present, not daydreaming or planning without any certain facts. And the fact that Erdogan is a president of Turkey, so for the time being, we take realistic steps towards restarting negotiations, and we would like Turkey to come with positive stance to the table.
The answer is no, by the way. The other side might be more radical than Erdogan.
No, but I've heard that there are a lot of young Turkish politicians that aren't.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. We hope so.
Any other questions? I have the microphone. Anybody?
Wait.
I just want to say one point. It's clear that Turkey is a regional power, a very important state in our region, and therefore we all hope that it will play a constructive role in stabilizing the region. From an Israeli perspective, in the last 1 year and a half, Turkey played a very unconstructive role. Its support to Hamas, its soaring relations with Israel, including economic relations. We still have hope, but I think that the burden of proof is on Turkey. We will see how eventualities will turn to be in Syria, for example, whether the common will to keep the unity of Syria and its sovereignty on the one hand, but protecting minorities, and especially the Kurd minority that is in Syria, that will be points of test. I think that Turkey can play in both fields, and therefore we hope that as a country they will turn into the more constructive road that is possible and open for it.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Any other questions?
President Trump is a very determined leader, and he will take no for an answer. He has shown he has a mandate in the United States. He's a strong government, and the people are behind him. My question is, all these other countries, Greece, Cyprus, and other countries around it, to what extent they can, and the European Union, everybody has their own story there, everybody thinking for himself. The Greeks think for themselves, the Germans, the French, and so forth and so on. What effect this will have to having a constructive policy in this place to face the common enemy? And maybe for Greece is Turkey, but Iran is a common enemy for everybody. To what extent the state of the governments in these countries, there's disputes, even in your country, in Israel, in Greece, in Cyprus, where they don't want to join NATO because they're internal politics. Thank you.
I think that when we look at the president's statements, when it comes to crucial issues in our own region, and I will speak about the Middle East, he brings a new perspective, very challenging, because it breaks it's out of the box ideas. But its main effect is to open conversation. He's not shying away from the problems, he defined them differently, and he forced us that are living in the region to look at the situation and to try to come with better solutions and answers. When it comes to Iran, which you mentioned specifically, I think that we see the threat of Iran in the same way. What is the most dangerous element in the Iranian hegemonic ambitions is their military nuclear ambition. And unfortunately, through the years, they become closer and closer to achieving their goal. But we have a window of opportunity. The window of opportunity is playing between two lines. A very credible military option, military capacity to deal with the Iranian threat, and on the other hand, readiness for diplomacy that will achieve that through engagement and discussions. And the ball is in the field, in the court of the Iranians. But there is a readiness to go on a diplomatic track. The different thing between maybe the past and diplomacy of the past and potentially the diplomacy of the future is in the details of such an agreement. We thought as Israel that the previous agreement that was called the JCPOA was a bad agreement. We thought then, when it was signed in 2015, that it is paving the way for Iran to become military nuclear power. If Iran would have stuck to the agreement, all the sanctions, all the leverages were taken out, and Iran would be able to break through into military nuclear capacity. Today they are applying, again, between two lines of military option and diplomacy. And I have a hope, a personal hope, that diplomacy will yield a good agreement that will prevent the use of the other leverages that are there. But the ability to discuss with radical extremist regimes like the Iranian regime cannot rely only on diplomacy. You have to have a big stick. You have to have the capacity that will force the other side to compromise. And I think that we are on the same page here with the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Any other questions from the audience before we wrap this up? Yes, go ahead.
I'm curious, Mr. Ambassador, with the Russian withdrawal from Syria, how much do you think Turkey is going to fill that vacuum?
Well, I don't know what will be the future of Russian presence in Syria, but for sure Turkey was present in Syria and now is entrenching and has more presence than before. So it will be recognizing a fact of life that the influence of Turkey within Syria at the moment is growing. It's not the only influence in that country. They have their own interest, but other players have their own interest. But I think that what is common is that we would like to stabilize Syria. We don't want to see more refugees going out from the country. We see more refugees or migrants in other places being able to go back into Syria. And for that, we need stable Syria. The main danger in Syria is that the de facto government that is controlling it, its origin is a jihadist Al-Qaeda origin. And therefore, the fact that they are wearing at the moment suits and not uniforms is not, and even they are giving the right kind of statements. The proof is in the pudding, and we'll have to see that all the promises and all these hopes that we have for Syria will be materialized. And if we can be active in helping them doing that, that will be something positive. Turkey, Saudi Arabia will be strong forces within Syria and probably will help if it will go on a positive track. Hopefully will help Syria to stabilize and not to be destabilized more.
I was going to say, though, that Turkey is now going after representatives of the PKK in Turkey, and they're also pressuring Kurds in Syria. So that is another Turkish direction.
I said it before. We think that minorities should be protected in Syria, whether they are the supporters of the previous regime, the Alawite, whether they are the Druze, or whether they are the Kurds or Christian minorities. Minorities has to be respected, the rights has to be protected, and the best way to do it is through internal agreement within Syria that will keep the country as one and will keep the protection. There are all kinds of promises, committees for national unity that will decide on future constitution. They are all good ideas if they will be implemented. Let's see how it's developed. But we have to be suspicious and vigilant.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for your questions. Before I let everyone go, we have a very special guest with us from the U.S. Embassy here in Athens. Please join me in welcoming Maria Olson, the Charge d'Affaires ad interim. Maria, would you like to come up and say some remarks?
Hi, everybody. I came back this afternoon from Thessaloniki, where I attended an event that was going on last night where the Prime Minister was speaking. And also, I, with our consulate, opened what we call the annual Tiano lecture, which actually is a lecture in memory of one of our consulate staff who was murdered during the Nazi period in 1942. He was, along with two other members of our consulate, was detained and unlike the other two members of the team, was unable to secure his release and was executed. Many, of course, other members of the Thessaloniki Jewish community were taken away to the camps where they were murdered. So we did a lecture with a survivor, a child then at the time, who survived the Holocaust. And so it's something we do every year. So I know it's been a long day of panels, and I think that there is a reception gathering out there, so I'm not gonna do more than say, really, thank you to all of you for what you do. Before I came to Greece almost more than 2.5 years ago, I was serving in the State Department's Office of Southern European Affairs, which is where I met Basel. And so this was almost 6 years ago. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was a wonderful experience because the Greek American diaspora is a community that cares about foreign policy. And so organizations like AHEPA, which do very good work both in the United States and overseas, I would meet regularly with members of AHEPA and other organizations to engage on the set of issues that you all work on and we work on in the region. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for being part of the organization, for spending your time to come and learn about the issues, to hear from our diplomatic and other colleagues about issues affecting the region. And I'm really grateful to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Maria, thank you for being here. You've been a wonderful partner with the Omogenia, the Diaspora, all the organizations, but especially with AHEPA. We can't thank you enough. Your service has been exemplary. While you were here with our good friend, now former Ambassador George Sounis, he couldn't say better words and accolades about you, and it's all true. So congratulations, and we wish you the best of luck as you continue on. And do you know when the new ambassador is coming? This is the $1,000 question.
So this is really short. I don't know. I do. I know that she's that Ms. Guilfoyle is very, from second and third and fourth hand reports, I know she's enthusiastic about getting out here, but I don't have any information about a timeline. The process is long, and it also depends on our Congress and the Senate. And so what I do know is we are rapidly getting ready, preparing briefing books, and making repairs on the beautiful ambassador's residence. So we're eager to have her out here. And in the meantime, I'm continuing to do the work, right? So thank you.
Maria's in charge. You heard it. Thank you, Maria.
So before the panel ends, I'd like to invite Margarita and Manny and Maria, and we can take a group photo if that's okay.
I also want to comment how many young people were here today. Θέλω να σας ευχαριστήσω την νεολαία που ήρθανε σήμερα και θέλω να μείνετε κι εσείς να βγάλετε φωτογραφία σε λίγο. Are we going to get down here? Obviously. I think. Yeah. Right there. That's good. Yeah. Let Basil take a picture first.
You're always looking at me.
No.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming. Thanks so much.
Thank you again, everybody.
I wanted also to finish with a hope that all hostages return back home and all families to be reunited in people for the people of Israel. I just hoped publicly that all families will be reunited and all hostages return back home. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Mr. Beck. You're wonderful. Thank you. And very patient. And very patient. Thank you. Oh, I get it.
Ελάτε οι νέοι εδώ μπροστά.
So do I. They could stand in the back.